welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about preparing for cons. I am your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, and I love talking about cards.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I'm just along for the ride. Where am I right now? Who am I? What is my name? Where?
You just said your name.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Ready Teddy Bannock, the guy who's just along for the ride.
Just along for the ride, mate. Over here across the pond.
Right. I don't know what that was.
Keep it fresh.
Can we just get to the patrons?
We will. We got a great episode, part of our little convention mini-series here, and it's made possible by patrons like you.
That's right. And so patrons, you guys can give a couple of bucks if you appreciate the content or if you're confused by Grant loving cards and Ted being along for the ride. We appreciate all our patrons, and this is about the time in the next couple of weeks we're going to be giving out our swag for the year. So we were ambitious this year, and so far everything is going along really well, and swag looks pretty cool this year. I'm pretty excited to unveil it at the Con of the Rings. If you want to become a patron, join us, patreon.com/cardtalk2018, and you too can join the ranks of patrons of the show, just like Jason, Miles, Ryan, Manuel, Grant, Katie, Eric, Rachel, Tony, Valentin, Eric, Dern's father, Moritz, Anders, Shane, Micah, Chris, Reagan, Robert, Brandon, Scott, Joe, Alex, Edmund, Peter, Niall, Carl, Vardane, James, Joshua, Matt, Russ, Justin, Jason, Robert, Kyle, Daniel, Mike, Robert, David, Sean, Lou, Phil, Joseph, and Dominic. So thank you, everybody. And also, if you are interested, you can go see content over at the blog. We are making a huge effort to try to make Card Talk content available to you in an easier way to consume. So that's including links to all the podcasts, but plus Matt has been over writing review articles for cards. If you're interested in writing review articles for cards, feel free to reach out to us either by email or on the social media. We're on all the places, and we can get you set up and help you. We'll help you help us. So again, that's over at cardtalk2018 at .com, and our email address is cardtalk2018@gmail.com. So whatever we need to do, I don't know, but Grant, you love talking about cards, so tell us what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, today we are going to continue on with our convention talk, where we talk about some cards that probably you'll see more play during convention time than they will in solo play. So we're going to just jump straight in with Reckless Attack. The zero cost Doom 2 Tactics event. Action. Each player deals 2 damage to an enemy engaged with him.
Right, so we're going to be talking about all the cards in the Tactics sphere, and Ted, you put this card on the list. So what's the scoop with this one?
Yeah, it's so of all the Doom cards, it's probably, it's one of the ones kind of on the bottom as far as impactful, but it's one of those events where each player gets an effect from it. So it's more effective the more players you have. And there's going to be some players in your game that don't want to engage enemies. They have decks that are focused on questing, high willpower heroes. But there's going to be a couple times where they have enemies in front of them, regardless, because there's too many. And this is one of the ways to kind of help them. It helps them put damage on there, so it makes it easier for ranged characters to kill or their own characters to kill them. So you want to, of course, it's polite to check with your fellowship, your other players before doing a doomed card, but you could say, hey, you know what? What if we doom 2 and we do 2 damage to all these guys? And they might say, oh yeah, that'll let us kill all of them. I mean, that's pretty big, so you don't have enemies being carried over turn over turn.
Right. I have to admit that when we proposed doing these shows, I was like, this is great. So I started with leadership, and I went through leadership cards and spirit and lore, and I was able to name cards that are really good for multiplayer. And then when I got to tactics, this just shows you where the hole in my own play style is that I play tactics, but I don't play tactics. Like, I'm not putting together solo tactics decks to take on stuff. And I know that that's a thing. There's a lot of Rohan, and there's reasons to play that, but I just really am the least familiar with those tactics cards that you're going to have to bring to a con. Not that you have to bring to a con, but that fall into this same category as reckless attack. There's some cards that just seem that you want to always include in tactics decks, and that's cool. But anyways, Grant, I think you brought up the next card on the list. So do you want to talk about? You want to say the card and then tell us what it is? Yeah,
it's Wait No Longer, the 2-cost tactics event. At the beginning of the quest phase, search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for an enemy and put it into play, engage with you, then reveal 1 less encounter card this phase to a minimum of 0. Shuffle the encounter deck.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the benefit of this card, but what were you thinking about with this?
Well, for example, if you're playing a 2-player game, 1 player uses Gildor's Council, the next player uses Wait No Longer, you reveal no encounter cards in staging. If you're playing a 3-player game, Gildor's Council, Wait No Longer, and what's the one that brings out locations?
It's the lore card.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of that.
What's the Wait No Longer?
Hidden Paths.
Hidden Paths, right?
Path.
Yep.
Hidden Path. Hidden Path.
Yeah.
The Hidden Way.
The Hidden Way.
As people were screaming, like, no,
I know.
that's right.
It's the Hidden Paths is the.
It's
is
the
a different
path
one.
that you
Yeah.
can't see, or
I think
something like that.
Right. The Hidden Path, I think, isn't that the one that switches the active location with the? I don't know. Anyways.
But either way, this allows you to basically control the encounter deck. You get an enemy. If someone's already used Gildor's Council, you've got a potential to reveal no cards during staging with this. Gildor's Council has the limit of a minimum of 1. This has a minimum of 0. You can quite literally just cancel the encounter deck for this turn by putting an enemy engaged with you.
Right. I mean, the next.
Yeah, it gives you a pseudo benefit too. Just to add on to that is that enemy becomes engaged with you, and it's not actually added to the staging area. So if that enemy was going to be flipped up, that's maybe 2 or 3 threat. You stop that threat from going in the staging area.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you've got something like Quick Strike, you could potentially kill it before it makes an attack against you.
Right, and Quick Strike I think is a universally good card that you play at any player count, but that made our list as something that if you're playing tactics you may want to consider including in your deck even more, just for those sorts of triggers. Quick Strike, I think it's okay. I'm gonna be a off-brand Ted here, and I'm gonna try to say what Quick Strike does, right? You pay 1 and you are able to make an attack against any eligible enemy and resolve the attack. So if you put that Wait No Longer guy into play and then you Quick Strike, he's gone and you don't have to worry about it, right? So
Yep. The full wording is exhaust a character you control to immediately declare it as an attacker and resolve its attack against any eligible enemy target.
Right. And those work across the table too. So if somebody else plays Wait No Longer, then you can Quick Strike their enemy, right? It's not somebody you control. So it's an exhaust a character somewhere.
It's exhaust a character you control.
Oh, it is exhaust a character you control. So okay.
Yeah.
So this is my solo-ness coming out, right? So
but if you've got, say, a Legolas who can then
or a range, right?
Or Bard the Bowman,
right,
who then gets -2 for a ranged attack, you could potentially kill that enemy straight away.
Right. There's a lot of benefit right there. Ted, you went back to the early game and talked about Thicket of Spears.
Yeah, so Thicket of Spears, that's a core set card. It costs 3 resources, tactics event, and you have to pay 1 resource from 3 different heroes' pools. So you have to be running mono tactics, or they have to be able to pay for tactics cards with a song or some fashion like that. But sometimes you can have one player will either voluntarily or involuntarily through treacheries and game mechanics, they will engage multiple enemies at once. And what they're going to have to do is the Thicket of Spheres will help them. They don't have to defend. You feint every single enemy. So even if they have 3 enemies, that's like playing 3 feint cards, right? It's the same number of resources to stop the same number of attacks. And that scenario is it's going to come up more often than you think in a 4-player game because there's just more enemies coming out.
Right. And let's take a break and talk about the more often thing, because I think that when you're talking about Thicket of Spears, its value is exactly what you say. You're going to come across this case where you're going to want to do that more often than you would if you're playing solo or 2-player.
Right.
And so one of those things that that happens more often when you're playing in a con or multiplayer 4-player is you're going through the encounter deck a lot more quickly. So I think that cards that put cards into the encounter deck, like Ho Tom Bombadil and the card that brings Eagle of the North and Ranger of the North, Ranger summons Eagle, whatever it is. I think that those cards, the Spirit one, the Wind of the Sea is not necessarily the best one, but if you can put cards into the encounter deck, I think that that's a really much better play than it would be if you were playing solo. Kind of along the same veins as Thicket of Spears, right? You're just going to see the cards more often. And so the chances of you drawing a Tom Bombadil become more likely because you're going to go through the encounter deck a lot more quickly. So it's important to, consider those cards as you're building your deck. Ted, it looks like you're looking something up very quickly, like a rule, right? I think that there's a rule that says that you can only put 3 encounter player cards in the deck, but if you're playing 4 players, that means each person can put 3, and right?
Sorta. It's more along the lines of you can only have 3 set aside encounter cards. Okay. Per deck. You can have as many as you want in the encounter deck itself. So you can have 3 copies of Eagles of the North. That's fine, but you can't have 3 copies of Eagle of the North and another card. But you could have two copies of Eagle of the North and 1 copy of Ho Tom Bombadil.
You can have Eagles of the North, and I can have I can have Tom Bombadil.
Right.
Like you can have your 3, I can have my 3, and Grant can have his 3.
Yes. I could have Ranger summons for Ranger of the North.
Right.
Yep. And everybody can have a different card or the same card. It's 3 per player is the rule.
Right. And so, but what I'm saying is, you're more likely to see those cards. And, the famous thing, I know that it's Electron John's story, but I was there when it happened. It was Joseph Forster from Three's Company and Ryan and Electron John and I playing one of the Dream Chaser. I forget which one it is. It's the one with all the objective locations that help you out all over the place. But he drew an Eagles of the North off the encounter deck. We shuffled the encounter deck because it was empty, and he revealed a second Eagle of the North, and just like you're not drawing an encounter card, so it's similar to Wait No Longer. I mean, you are drawing an encounter card, but you're not getting a bad encounter card, and you get to destroy something with the Eagle of the North. So it's something to really consider with in a con, and probably there's not a ton of people doing it. right? Eagles of the North and all of those cards that add are not unique either. So everybody can bring their 3 and you're not worried about overlap. Does that sound reasonable?
Absolutely.
Okay. Grant, what's next? We talked about Quick Strike, so what's the next card on the list after that?
The next card on the list is Secret Vigil. And this card is great even outside of multiplayer. It gains more benefit with multiplayer because it's 1 cost, attached to an enemy gets -1 threat, limit 1 per enemy, response when attached enemy is destroyed, reduce each player's threat by the attached enemy's printed threat.
Yeah, and you're just going to see more enemies. You're going to always want threat reduction. Like, it's a great card. It's a great card if you're playing solo. It becomes better when you're playing multiplayer. I think that's
but I will stress that it is destroyed and not just discarded or removed from play.
If you great hunt it, you can't great hunt it out of existence. You have to actually kill it.
Or Eagles of the North won't work on it either.
Right.
You got to earn it.
You got to hit right.
You got to hit it hard.
Right. And the last one we had on our tactics list was the Hammer Stroke, and which is interesting because the Hammer Stroke is one of those cards that people don't ever play. If I'm remembering, again, tactics isn't my thing. I probably should have looked it up before we did this, but I think the Hammer Stroke just allows you to engage. It forces you to engage every character into play, right? Or every enemy in play comes to you.
It's 2 cost. Encounter action, engage each enemy in play.
Right. Which can be very
combos
helpful.
Well with Thicket of Spears.
Right. Thicket of Spears.
One player engages all of it. You're like, I'll engage everything. And then someone's like, okay, none of them attack you.
Right.
Or you could have it where you engage everyone. Someone plays Light the Beacons. And then you have, say, someone like Grimbiorn or Baragon that can then just defend the entire lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then there's another tactics card which allows you to not exhaust to attack.
Yes.
Wrath, Hour of Wrath.
Hour of Wrath, that's
Hour
it.
of Wrath.
You put that onto Eowyn, you do her little party trick, and then Eowyn's killing everything, right? Like, okay, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead.
That's
you're dead.
the ultimate. It's the it's the ultimate 3 card, I guess 4 card, 3 card in your deck, and it costs 9 resources. Is if you play Hour of Wrath, Thicket of Spears, and the one that engage the Hammer Stroke.
The Hammer Stroke.
Right, it costs 9 resources. You engage everything in play. None of them attack, and then Eowyn attacks all of them with her ability. If
you're in Valor, however, Hour of Wrath, choose a player until the end of the phase. Each of that player's heroes do not exhaust to attack or defend.
Also strong. I see that come up. People have played it, and they played this card in cons with and without Valor. It makes such a huge difference.
Right.
And you're like, I'm going to give Grimbiorn unlimited blocks. You're like, okay.
Yeah. I won't. That's fine.
Just what Grant mentioned. Like, okay, Baragon blocks everything. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's fine.
Grimbiorn just crushes everything. Legolas just crushes everything.
Yeah.
Right.
It's cannon fodder.
Right. That sort of combo is right up your alley, Grant. I can see you loving that sort of hack slash thing.
I would be lying if I said I hadn't played Hour of Wrath and Legolas.
That's good. Some of the neutral cards, I mean, neutral, it's not a sphere, but, we have some neutral cards that work. And so the Free Peoples, Justin came on the show within the past year and talked about the Free Peoples because that bonus, you have to control 9 traits, but that bonus goes to everybody. You get +1 for everybody on the table, not just your cards, right?
Well, the +1 willpower effect applies to only the the person who played the card. So if I play it, all my characters get +1 willpower. But the second part of the fact is that it's like a Grim Resolve. It readies all characters in play.
Right. That's what it is.
It's like an improved Grim Resolve, but it's neutral. And again, it makes a huge impact, just like we talked about how Grim Resolve did in the leadership episode.
Yeah,
Right.
but you do have to have those 9 different traits
Yeah, it's
on
still
characters
price.
you control.
Right.
Yeah, but check out that episode. Justin makes a great case for how easy it is to get there.
Right.
Oh yeah, he done a slideshow presentation for that.
That's how you do it.
Yeah,
You
the
do
audio
it that
version
way.
is good, but make sure to watch the video one to check out the PowerPoint.
Go over to the blog and find the link there.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. And the other neutral card that we had in there was the Shadow of the Past, which takes the top card of the encounter deck and puts it back on, or the top card of the discard pile of the encounter deck and puts it back on the encounter deck, right?
Yeah, it's 2-cost neutral event. Move the top card of the encounter discard pile to the top of the encounter deck.
So why is that better than normal playing
This
at a con, I guess?
Yeah, this one's it's quite strong. Both, it's really strong solo actually, but it gives the table some more versatility.
Yeah, it gives you a bit more of encounter deck manipulation. You know what's coming, or if you're playing, say, the Black Rider set, and you've got you just discarded Gildor and Gloria.
Mm-hmm.
You can then play Shadow of the Past to put them back on top of the encounter deck. It's a great card all around. If you're going into the engagement / combat phase, you can put something on top of the encounter deck to be dealt as that doesn't have a nasty shadow effect. You can have that dealt as a shadow card.
Yeah, then that's what I was going to say is that like a rules, I don't know, thing is that when you discard shadow cards, like you don't discard shadow cards until like the end of combat. I mean, so you can stack those shadow cards any way that you want and then play Shadow of the Past to get whatever shadow card back on top of the deck that you want.
Well, what I was saying is instead of, see, you've got a hill troll that is the highest the highest engagement cost there, you could play Shadow of the Past to say give it a effect, give it no shadow effect, so
right.
You know that you aren't going to get that despair shadow, which makes you negate your defense,
right,
and basically treat it
sure.
as undefended.
And that I understood. I was just saying that, you know, as another thing to do with it.
Yeah,
on
you
top,
could.
as you can jury rig the deck. You're right,
Yeah.
to so that you get what you want on top. And you know what, Ted? I'm going to bring this up just for you.
All right.
What do you do if there's a Gandalf guy? And so I'm going to, before, right, Ted's Gandalf guy. I'm going to say that this was probably a bigger issue earlier in the card pool, but now the card pool is robust enough that you can have Hero Gandalf in play and not have Ally Gandalf around and not lose too much, right? Like, I mean, of course, Ally Gandalf's one of the most powerful allies, but I feel like, you know, if you have a deck that's, you know, you can take out Ally Gandalf, and if you have sneak attack, take out sneak attack, and, you know, and put in some of these other cards that we've talked about, and still be all right. You know, like it's not going to be anything you have to worry about. Earlier in the card pool, Gandalf was so powerful and so interesting that you needed, you know, Gandalf guy was like, I hate being, you know, I hate that you brought Gandalf, but I don't think it's as big of a deal now anymore. But Ted, go ahead. What's your comments?
Yeah,
about Gandalf
so
guy?
just kind of good when you're doing pickup games with players, when you're going to an event or playing online, you're making decks to play multiplayers, and you're not coordinating with someone at like an online convention, you're going to run into unique conflicts, right? With people having heroes, or because there's lots of heroes that have ally versions and vice versa, right? We have We have Boromir, we have Haldir, we have Glorfindel, we have Elrond, Gandalf. There's a ton. The Hobbits, Merry Pippin, Sam. Um, so it's a good idea when you're constructing your decks is it's kind of stolen from another game. Players bring a sideboard. It's good to have a sideboard, a spare, 5, 10, 15 cards that you put either with that deck or the noise that I wasn't expecting.
That's your sideboard.
Boing. It's a sideboard jumping out at you like,
yeah.
Put me. It's good where you're like, okay, you know what? I really plan on having this hero in play, but you know what? Is this hero critical to my deck? Could I take out my hero Faramir and swap him with another ranged lore hero like Haldir? And if that's the case, then yeah, you should be able to like have those cards with you so you can make those changes.
Right. The other thing is maybe Tactics Eowyn. She's always super powerful, and if I play, a weekend at the con, I would say at least half the games or more have Tactics Eowyn on the board, because she's that good. So if you have a deck with Tactics Eowyn, who do you replace Tactics Eowyn with?
Someone who has high willpower, because usually that's what she's doing in that role. It's not quite the same, but hero Theoden.
Mm-hmm.
He's certainly he's going to be twice as much threat, but he's questing for 3, and if you have another tactics hero, he's boosting all tactics heroes' willpower, right? And you might have some more of those in a multiplayer game.
Yeah, I was going the other way, and I was thinking, well, maybe you're using Eowyn for low threat to start with, so maybe you go with Tactics Mary. Tactics Mary can quest for 2, and that's not horrible, right? And if he group attacks with somebody, he can ready that person a second time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and he can kill stuff. So
I knew Dave would go Hobbits.
Grimbeorn.
No.
Oh, okay.
I was actually going to think of Hyagon.
Okay.
He's 2 willpower, so he's a little bit less than Eowyn, but he does give you the ability to play cards outside of the planning phase.
Right.
Yeah, had to reduce cost even.
Yep.
Yeah. So
not Grimbeorn. Wow. Okay.
Well, if I'm sitting at the table, I've probably got Grimbeorn on the table.
Oh, right.
Take Grimbeorn. It's just who I am.
Grant Grimbeorn Thompson.
Yep.
But it's also one of those things like if you have a lore conflict with a lore hero, you have a Treebeard deck, somebody else has a bad example. I guess that's, you're just not going to play your Treebeard deck. But think about playing, substituting your lore hero. Maybe you have Lord Denethor. I don't know. Somebody's got a limited card pool. Maybe you have Lord Denethor, they have Lord Denethor. Talk to him, play Biffer. Biffer's a great substitute hero. Toss resources around the board.
Yeah, low threat. And so it's good to not only have multiple decks in general, try to have, I say at least 3 decks is good. Try not to bring just one. And even for those decks, consider substitutions. Like have at least one substitution for one or more heroes. Like, I could easily swap this lore hero out for, Barivor, or this tactics hero for, someone else like Boromir, just someone who has a 3 attack value as opposed to, Legolas or something.
And one of the things, Ted, you've said this for forever, and Con of the Rings listened. This year, there's an achievement where you play a game with somebody else's deck, and so it's always good. And this is separate from having substitutions and sideboards and stuff, but it's maybe adjacent to it is that play with somebody else's deck. A lot of people in this community, especially, will be like, "Oh, you need a deck? Here's one. As long as I get it back, it's fine. Here you go. Play this deck." And there's an achievement at the con that says play with other people's decks. So that's always good.
You will be handling, you might be handling, so you're going to be handling someone else's cards, right? Someone might play an unexpected courage on you, and you're taking that card and putting it on your hero. Or a lot of times, sometimes people will share tokens because rather than everyone use their own tokens, they might say, oh, you know what, use mine. And that way, they come from one place and they all go back to one place. And just general non-dickery, just treat that stuff better than your own.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the community that you don't have to worry about that usually, but, I think that it's also the community where, you can ask people for a deck and they're likely to give it to you, with the with the idea that they're going to get it back in decent condition and, that sort of stuff.
Right.
So maybe not give them your deck that has alt art Boromir in it, but you can still give them a deck. People can still get a deck, and and it's funny because when you have, and this is maybe a great way to wrap it up about deck building and deck considerations here for the con is that when you have a game like Lord of the Rings where it's not a competitive card game and you end up with so many different deck ideas that it's really a great idea to listen to this show or to get ideas from other people about how they build decks, especially going into a con. When you're playing solo, it's a different mindset. You're playing, you're doing stuff, and one of the things you may want to do when you're playing solo is to not have to worry about your own deck so you can enjoy the play. But playing multiplayer and playing with somebody else's deck like that adds some fun to the game because you're like, oh, here's an option. Somebody else across the table said, hey, instead of putting that unexpected courage here, put it over here. Or, why don't you play, Wait No Longer now? That conversation happens with a cooperative card game as opposed to a competitive card game. And because it's not competitive, there's nothing is out of bounds. There's not one or two really powerful decks that everybody plays with and competes against, and then that's it. It's always just, it's it's every card has a place in the card pool, and right, Ted, and at a con you're likely to find different cards have different places, and that's the fun of going to a con. That's part of the fun of going to a con. So that's my little spiel about going to Con of the Rings here. And if you can't get it to it this year, I highly recommend trying to get to a con. Whether it's Con of the Rings or organized.
There's Gen Con. I don't know if I've never been to. It's a smaller one in Ohio, Origins. I've never been to Origins, but there's conventions like that all over. Of course, many of them have been suspended or online due to the pandemic in the last year and a half.
And
at the time of this,
go ahead.
I was gonna say at the time of this recording, everything is still on for Con of the Rings, but make sure to subscribe to their newsletter, check out their websites so you're up to date on any events or changes.
And just as a thing, if you're in Europe, Lure of Middle Earth is another good con hosted by our friend Dominic. Also, the LCG cons online are amazing to check out. Great group of people who run that, set that up, and all the lads that play are generally there having a good time. So check it out.
Yeah. And so I think, this past 4 weeks gave everybody just a flavor of ideas and deck building. I mean, that's the underpinning of this show, right? Give people things to chew on for deck building ideas. And so we have Con of the Rings coming up. So, hopefully you guys have a lot to chew on and, help. And maybe at the con, you're going to say, I watched your episode of Card Talk and I put a copy of Reckless attack into the encounter deck just because, and and then it help win a scenario, and that's like the ultimate compliment for us here, is that you thought of, you used us as inspiration in some way or shape or form. So, well, gentlemen, I think that wraps up what we're trying to get across to everybody. And so, nothing's highly scientific and arbitrary this episode, but you know what? Join us again, and we will talk about more cards from the game. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube, and there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.